Quinn Vaughn was already late for his second shift when he spotted the leather wallet lying on the sidewalk near the gas station, half hidden beneath a crushed soda cup. He glanced down at his son, Damon, who was clutching his tiny backpack and blinking up at him sleepily. "Buddy, we gotta move," Quinn muttered, scooping up the wallet with one hand while securing Damon more firmly on his hip with the other. The kid was 5, too big to carry for long, but the old stroller had finally given out last week and Quinn hadn't had the cash to replace it yet. He opened the wallet quickly to see if there was an address or number inside. Maybe he could drop it at the owner's place on the way. The ID slipped out into his palm. Gwen Foster. She looked like the kind of woman who'd never stepped foot in this part of town. Mid-30s, confident smile, sleek dark hair, eyes that practically stared right through the photo. Her address was listed in a building Quinn had only ever driven by, once the kind with a doorman and marble floors. He didn't even know people actually lived there. "Daddy, I'm hungry," Damon whispered, tugging on his sleeve. Quinn sighed. He had exactly $12 until his paycheck hit tomorrow morning. "We'll grab something cheap at the deli, all right?" But he couldn't pretend he hadn't seen the address. He shoved the ID back into the wallet and adjusted Damon on his hip. "Let's go return this, kiddo. She probably needs it." 30 minutes and 2 subway stops later, Quinn stood in front of a glass tower that rose into the clouds. The doorman raised an eyebrow the moment Quinn stepped inside, wearing his old work boots and a faded hoodie. "I'm just here to return something someone dropped." "A wallet." "Gwen Foster," he said, holding it up. The doorman's tone shifted. "One moment." A few minutes later, the elevator doors opened, and Gwen Foster stepped into the lobby. Quinn hadn't expected her to be even more breathtaking in person. She wore a tailored navy coat, heels that clicked confidently on the marble floor, and a look of confusion as she scanned the room until her eyes landed on him and Damon. "That's mine," she said, walking up quickly. "You found it." Quinn handed it over. "Yeah, just outside a gas station near Roosevelt. Thought you might want it back." Her brows lifted. "You came all the way here just to return it?" "Well, figured you'd need your cards," he said with a shrug. "ID's a pain to replace." Gwen stared at him for a second longer than necessary. Then her gaze dropped to Damon, who was now hiding behind Quinn's leg. "And who's this?" "My son, Damon," Quinn said, brushing the boy's hair back. "Sorry, we were just on our way to a shift." "You brought him with you?" "No sitter today," Quinn said. "Life's like that sometimes." Gwen's mouth opened like she wanted to say something else, but instead she pulled something from her purse. "At least let me give you something for returning it." "No," Quinn said immediately. "I didn't do it for that." She tilted her head. "You spent subway fare and time you probably couldn't waste. I'm not taking anything. Just glad it's back with you." He turned to leave, Damon already climbing back into his arms without a word. "Wait," Gwen said. "At least let me buy you both dinner. You didn't have to come all this way. Let me say thank you properly." Quinn hesitated. "I appreciate it, but please," she said. "One dinner. It won't be weird. I promise." Damon tugged on his jacket. "Can we, Daddy? I'm really hungry." Quinn looked down at his son, then back at Gwen. Something about her didn't feel fake. She didn't seem like the kind of person who pitted him, just genuinely wanted to do something nice. "All right," he said finally. "But nothing fancy." Gwen smiled. "Deal." They ended up at a quiet Italian place nearby, one that Quinn had never dared to walk into before. But Gwen seemed to know the staff by name, and they didn't bat an eye when Damon accidentally spilled his water. She ordered pasta for all 3 of them, and Damon was halfway through his bowl before Gwen leaned in. "So what do you do?" "Construction, mostly, and nighttime janitorial at a storage facility." "2 jobs?" she asked softly. "Gotta make it work," Quinn said. "It's just me and him. Been that way since Damon was 2. Gwen nodded but didn't pry. Instead, she asked Damon about his favorite animals, laughed when he said dinosaurs, and offered him a chocolate gelato he devoured like he hadn't eaten in a week. When the bill came, Quinn tried to reach for it, but Gwen already had her card out. "I said it was on me," she insisted. "Still feels weird." "Then next time, you can cover coffee." He blinked. "Next time?" Gwen smiled. "Yeah, I'd like to see you again." Quinn didn't know what to say. He wasn't the kind of guy women like her wanted to see again. He had a 5-year-old, 2 jobs, and barely enough time to sleep. But something about the way she was looking at him made him say, "Yeah, okay. Coffee sounds good." She stood outside the restaurant with them, kneeling to say goodbye to Damon before gently brushing a curl from his forehead. "You're a really cool kid, you know that?" Damon beamed. "You're pretty cool too." Quinn watched them, his heart doing something strange in his chest. He walked away thinking it was just dinner. Just a thank you. He didn't know Gwen Foster was a millionaire, and he sure as hell didn't expect to fall in love with her. Quinn didn't expect to hear from Gwen again. He figured their dinner had been one of those fleeting, generous gestures, something wealthy people did to ease their guilt or feel noble. He'd been grateful, sure, but he hadn't let himself think about her too much afterward. He didn't have time to fantasize about women who lived in penthouses and wore heels that cost more than his rent. But 3 days later, she showed up outside the community center where he dropped Damon off for daycare. She was standing beside a sleek black car, dressed in pale slacks and a burgundy blouse that caught the wind as she walked toward him. "I didn't know you volunteered here," she said, her eyes brighter than he remembered. He adjusted the strap of his work bag. "I don't. Damon goes here while I'm at work. I was in the neighborhood," she said, though her gaze didn't waver from his face. "Thought I'd see if you wanted that coffee." Quinn blinked. "You remembered? I told you I owed you. I always keep my word." She didn't wait for him to answer, just lifted an eyebrow and gestured toward a small cafe across the street. "They make a dangerous cinnamon latte." He hesitated. He wasn't dressed for anything more than hauling drywall, faded jeans, boots caked in dust, and a work shirt with his name stitched above the pocket. But Gwen didn't look away. She didn't flinch. Inside the cafe, she ordered for both of them without asking, and somehow still got the drink exactly how he liked it. "How do you know what I drink?" he asked, taking a cautious sip. "I don't," she said. "You just look like a black coffee kind of guy. No sugar, no fuss." He chuckled. "You're not wrong." She leaned back, studying him. "So, what's your story? Isn't that what dinner was for?" "No," she said. "Dinner was me saying thank you. This is me being curious." Quinn looked out the window for a moment. "There's not much to it. I work. I raise my son." "That's the story. There's always more than that." He set the mug down. "Why do you care?" "Because I like talking to people who don't pretend," she said. "And you don't?" Quinn didn't know how to respond to that. So he asked, "What about you?" She smiled faintly. "My story's probably boring to you. Try me. I run a company that helps restructure failing brands, mostly fashion startups that couldn't scale. I buy them, fix them, resell when they're stable. Sounds like you play Monopoly with real businesses. Sometimes it feels that way." He studied her carefully. "You don't seem like someone who has time for coffee with strangers." "I don't," she admitted. "But I made time." "Why?" She hesitated, then said, "Because you walked out of a marble lobby with your head high and didn't ask for anything. That doesn't happen a lot in my world." Quinn looked at her, really looked at her this time. She seemed comfortable in her skin, but there was something beneath the polish, something that flickered behind her eyes when she thought no one was watching. "You ever get tired of it?" he asked. "What?" "All of it. The pressure, the suits, the boardrooms." She didn't answer right away. Then, "Sometimes. But I built it. It's mine. That means something." He nodded. "It does." They sat in silence for a moment, the kind that wasn't awkward or forced. Just two people who didn't need to fill every second with noise. Eventually, Gwen checked her watch and stood. "I've got a meeting in 20 minutes. "Of course," he said, standing too. "But I'm glad I caught you." Quinn walked her to the curb where the car was waiting. The driver stepped out to open the door, but she waved him off. "Thanks for the coffee," he said. "Next time, it's on you." "I don't know if I can afford that latte." She laughed, and it wasn't the kind of laugh people faked in polite conversation. "Then I'll settle for diner coffee." Before she stepped into the car, she handed him a small card. "That's my number, in case you ever want to talk. Or if Damon decides he needs more pasta." He slipped it into his pocket without looking at it. "I'll keep that in mind." As the car pulled away, Quinn stood on the sidewalk, unsure what had just happened. Later that night, after Damon was asleep and the apartment was finally quiet, he pulled the card from his jacket and stared at the simple embossed print. No title, no company, just her name and a number. He didn't call, but he didn't throw it away either. The next week passed in a blur of overtime and missed sleep. Quinn didn't expect to see her again. But on Friday, when he picked Damon up from the community center, one of the staff waved him over. "Hey, Quinn, someone dropped this off for you earlier." He took the envelope, frowning. Inside was a voucher for a full week of daycare, paid in advance. No note. Just a single line written in neat cursive on the back. No strings. Just time. Quinn stared at it for a long time. Then he pulled out his phone. He didn't text. He called. Quinn stood outside the modest apartment building, phone still warm in his hand. He wasn't sure what he'd expected when Gwen answered, but it certainly wasn't her saying, "I'm 20 minutes away. Don't go anywhere." Now, as the sun dipped behind the rooftops and cast long shadows across the pavement, he waited. Damon sat on the front stoop beside him, tracing patterns on the concrete with a stick, humming a tune from a cartoon he'd seen that morning. A sleek silver car pulled up to the curb. Gwen stepped out, not in heels or tailored clothes this time. She wore sneakers and a soft oatmeal-colored sweater, her hair pulled back casually. She looked different, less guarded, lighter somehow. She didn't wave or call out. She just walked toward them like she'd done it 100 times. "Hey," she said, stopping a foot away. Damon looked up and gave a small, surprised grin. "You came back. I said I would," she replied, crouching beside him. "I brought something." She opened the canvas bag slung over her shoulder and handed him a paperback with a bright, illustrated dinosaur on the cover. Damon took it like it was made of gold. "Thank you," he whispered, instantly flipping to the first page. Gwen stood and turned to Quinn. "Thought you might want to use that voucher time for something other than a third shift." His jaw tightened. "You didn't have to do that." "I know. I wanted to." He looked away, hands settling into his back pockets. "I don't like owing people." "You don't," she said. "But you could do something with the time. Something for you." He studied her face. She wasn't pushing. She wasn't trying to fix anything. She was just offering. After a beat, he asked, "You eat dinner yet?" She smiled. "Not yet." "Good. I've got exactly enough for 2 grilled cheese sandwiches and a questionable bag of frozen fries." "Sounds gourmet," she said, and followed him inside. The apartment wasn't much. 2 small bedrooms, cracked linoleum floors, and a living room barely wide enough for the second-hand couch and TV stand. But it was clean, and it was home. Gwen didn't glance around like she was auditing the place. She toed off her shoes by the door and dropped onto the floor beside Damon, who was already engrossed in the book. Quinn disappeared into the kitchen, trying not to think too hard about how strange it felt to have her here. Not just in his space, but in his world. She joined him in the kitchen 10 minutes later, stirring the fries halfway through their oven time and laughing when the smoke alarm chirped over the grilled cheese. "You cook under pressure often?" she asked, waving dish towel smoke toward the ceiling. "Only when I'm trying to impress someone," he said without thinking. She lifted an eyebrow. "Is it working?" He glanced at her. "You're still here, aren't you?" Dinner was eaten on the couch, Damon between them, crumbs scattered across his pajama top. After the dishes were rinsed and stacked, Gwen offered to read to Damon while Quinn got a quick shower. He paused in the hallway, watching her settle onto the couch with the dinosaur book and begin reading in a dramatic voice that made Damon giggle uncontrollably. It hit him harder than he expected, seeing her there so natural, like she belonged. When he came back, Damon was asleep against her side, the book open across his lap. "I didn't mean to knock him out," she whispered, brushing his hair back gently. "He probably kept you awake with questions." "A lot of dinosaur trivia. I'm officially educated." He lifted Damon carefully, carrying him to his room and tucking him in. When he returned, Gwen was standing by the window, arms folded, gazing out at the dark street below. "You ever wonder what you'd be doing if things hadn't gone the way they did?" she asked without turning. He leaned against the wall. "All the time. But it doesn't change much." She finally looked at him. "You know I wasn't going to tell you." "Tell me what?" "That I have money." He didn't speak. "I didn't want you to see me as a bank account. Or worse, a project. I've been both before." "You think I'd treat you like that?" "I didn't know," she said, voice quiet. "But I didn't want to risk it." He crossed the room slowly, stopping just beside her. "So why now?" "Because I realized I was hiding behind it. Like if I didn't say it out loud, it wouldn't matter. But it does. And you deserve to know who I really am." Quinn studied her, then asked, "Does who you are change how you see me?" "No," she said. "But I was scared it might change how you see yourself." He didn't answer. Not right away. Then he said, "I've worked my whole life to stay standing. That doesn't change just because you've got a bigger view from your window." Her eyes flickered. "You're not intimidated? By money?" "No. But I am wondering why someone like you keeps showing up in a life like mine." She looked up at him. "Because you're the first person who sees me, not the empire." He didn't know what to say to that. So he reached for her hand instead. She let him. They stood there in the quiet apartment, the hum of the fridge the only sound between them. Eventually, she said, I have to fly to Chicago tomorrow. 2 days. Quinn nodded. I want to come back, she added. He squeezed her hand gently. Then come back. She leaned up, kissed his cheek, and whispered, keep your phone nearby this time. He walked her to the door. And after she left, the silence didn't feel so heavy anymore. Damon's laughter echoed through the rooftop garden as he darted between the potted citrus trees, weaving past a small fountain with his arms stretched like airplane wings. Quinn leaned against the terrace railing, watching his son with a quiet smile, the late afternoon sun casting gold across the skyline. Gwen stood beside him, her shoulder brushing his. Do you think he realizes this isn't a park? He thinks anywhere with plants and space to run is a park, Quinn said. He's 5. She grinned, brushing a strand of hair back from her face as the wind caught it. I had this space built out for meetings, you know. Thought it'd impress clients. Guess it's being used for something better now. They fell into a comfortable silence, the kind that had begun threading more and more naturally between them. In the weeks since she'd returned from Chicago, Gwen had become part of their lives in ways Quinn hadn't expected, not just visits or dinners, but school pickups, weekend grocery runs, and Tuesday mornings spent on the floor building Lego towers while Damon narrated elaborate dinosaur adventures. It wasn't fast. It was just right. Gwen tilted her head toward him. I want to show you something. You're not going to pull out a diamond-encrusted coffee machine or something, are you? No diamonds, she said. But come with me. She led him downstairs, through a corridor he hadn't seen before, into a room that looked like it belonged in a magazine, high ceilings, soft lighting, and floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the city. But it was what sat in the center of the space that made Quinn freeze. A drafting table. Brand new. Next to it, a set of professional tools, blueprint paper, rulers, pencils, and a cutting mat. Along the wall, books on architecture, construction design, and structural engineering. I remembered you said you used to sketch, she said softly. That you liked building things before you had to just fix them. Quinn stepped inside slowly, eyes sweeping across the room. It's yours, she said. You don't owe me anything. I just want you to have the space to do something for you again. His hands curled into fists at his sides. You can't just, Gwen. I can't take this. I didn't ask for. I know, she said, stepping in front of him. But I've watched you give everything to Damon. Every hour, every ounce of energy. You never asked for anything back. Let someone do something for you. He looked at her then, really looked. This isn't just about the table. No, she said. It's not. You're not doing this out of guilt? Not even a little. He turned back toward the space, running a hand along the smooth edge of the table. I stopped drawing when my ex left. I couldn't justify spending time on something that didn't put food on the table. She stepped closer. What if it could? He turned to her. What do you mean? I have a friend who runs a development firm. They're launching a program for community-based housing, affordable builds, designed by people who understand what it means to live inside them. She's looking for someone with real-world knowledge. Someone who knows how these places should feel, not just how they should look. Quinn's voice was quiet. You want me to design houses? I want you to consider it, she said. You don't have to say yes. But I see what you're capable of. And I think it's time the world sees it too. He didn't trust his voice, so he just nodded. Once. Downstairs, Damon's voice rang out from the garden, calling for Gwen to come see his leaf collection. She gave Quinn a quick kiss on the cheek and headed back up, leaving him alone in the room. He didn't cry, but he sat at the drafting table for a long time, one hand resting on the pencil, the other over his heart, steadying the way it beat like it hadn't in years. 2 months later, Quinn stood in front of a group of investors and city planners in a converted warehouse-turned-gallery, presenting his first proposal. Gwen stood in the back, arms crossed, pride shining in her eyes as he gestured toward the rendering, a housing complex built with low-cost materials and efficient layouts, designed with single parents and working families in mind. Afterward, a developer approached him. Your designs are raw, but sharp. You've clearly lived this. I have, Quinn said, and I'm ready to build something better. Gwen found him by the drinks table after the crowd thinned. You were incredible. I was terrified. You didn't look it. He turned to her. I've been thinking about something. Oh. He pulled a small folded paper from his pocket and handed it to her. She opened at one of his sketches. A simple house, 2 bedrooms, a small porch out front. But inside the page, in his sharp pencil handwriting, were the words, Will you build a life with me? Her eyes filled, but she didn't blink them away. "You're asking me to move in? I'm asking you to start something that isn't temporary." She folded the paper carefully, then slid it back into his jacket pocket. "Yes. Absolutely yes." 6 months later, they were married in a small rooftop ceremony surrounded by people who mattered. Damon wore a tiny suit and danced like nobody was watching. Gwen wore a dress that shimmered like water, and Quinn could barely look at her without forgetting how to breathe. They didn't have a honeymoon in the traditional sense. Instead, they spent 2 weeks building bookshelves in their new house, a modest one, designed by Quinn, with Gwen's touches in every room. Damon had his own room with a galaxy mural Gwen painted herself. They built a swing in the backyard, and Gwen insisted on planting lemon trees, saying they reminded her of the rooftop garden where Damon first called her cool. The money never mattered. Not to Quinn. What mattered was the way Gwen laughed when she was barefoot in the kitchen. The way she kissed Damon's forehead every night. The way she never tried to save him, just believed in him. And that belief changed everything. Because love, real love, wasn't about rescue. It was about rising together. The morning sun poured through the windows of their new house, casting long lines of light across the kitchen floor where Gwen stood barefoot, sipping tea and reviewing a stack of design mock-ups. Quinn was outside with Damon, helping him fill the raised garden bed they'd finally finished building. The boys' excited chatter drifted through the open window, blending with the steady rhythm of birdsong and distant laughter from the neighboring kids. Gwen set the papers down and leaned on the counter for a moment, her gaze lingering on the backyard. It wasn't the view she'd grown used to, no skyline, no glittering towers, but it was the one she now loved most. The one that grounded her. That made everything else feel like it had finally fallen into place. When Quinn walked in, his shirt speckled with dirt and Damon trailing behind him with a trowel in hand, Gwen raised an eyebrow. "Are we planting vegetables or trying to dig a tunnel to the other side of the earth?" Quinn grinned and leaned in to kiss her cheek. He got ambitious. "I told him we're starting with carrots and herbs." Damon dropped the trowel on the floor with a clatter and pointed triumphantly. "And sunflowers. I want them to be taller than Daddy." Gwen crouched beside him. "If they are, we'll need a ladder just to see their tops." Damon nodded solemnly. "Then we'll get a ladder." Quinn tousled his son's hair. "Go wash up. We've got that community fair this afternoon, remember?" As Damon bolted off, leaving a trail of dirt in his wake, Gwen turned to Quinn. "You still sure you're up for speaking at that panel?" He nodded, reaching for a glass of water. "I'm not the guy who hides behind drywall anymore. I've got something to say now." "You always did," she said softly. "You just needed space to say it." He crossed the room and wrapped his arms around her waist, drawing her close. "You gave me that, and more." Later that afternoon, they arrived at the local fairgrounds, where booths lined the grassy field and the scent of grilled food filled the air. Kids ran between face painting stations and balloon artists, and families wandered past tables filled with handmade crafts and baked goods. Quinn took a deep breath as he stepped onto the small stage, the crowd settling as he adjusted the mic. Gwen stood just to the side, Damon perched on a hay bale with a lemonade in hand. "I used to think people like me didn't belong in rooms like this," Quinn began. "That if you didn't come from money or a certain kind of background, your voice didn't count. But I've learned something lately. The best builders are the ones who know what it feels like to live inside the walls they raise. And the strongest foundations? They're built on love, on grit, on showing up every day, even when it's hard." He scanned the crowd, catching Gwen's eye. "I spent a long time thinking I had to carry everything on my own. But then someone walked into my life who didn't try to take the weight from me. She just stood next to me and said, 'You don't have to do it alone.'" People clapped, some nodded, others wiped at their eyes. Gwen's expression didn't shift, but her fingers curled tighter around the edge of Damon's seat. After the panel, they lingered near the booths, eating kettle corn and watching Damon bounce in the inflatable castle. A few people came up to thank Quinn for his words, others asked about his housing initiative, and one local councilman invited him to speak at a city hall forum. When they finally returned home, the sun was setting behind the hills, and Damon had fallen asleep in the back seat with a sticky smile still on his face. Quinn carried him inside, tucked him into bed, and returned to the living room where Gwen waited, curled up on the couch with a sketchbook in her lap. He sat beside her and pulled her feet into his lap. "You know what I've realized? I don't miss the city. Not even a little." She looked at him, brushing a thumb across the corner of his mouth. "Then we've done it right." He leaned in and kissed her, slow and certain. "I've been thinking," she said after a pause. About expanding the housing project. Not just here. Other communities. We've got the framework now. The partnerships. I want us to be part of something bigger. You mean you and me? I mean us. All three of us. As a team. He nodded, then reached into the drawer beneath the coffee table and pulled out a small velvet box. When he opened it, a simple gold band rested inside next to a thinner one adorned with small emeralds. I never got you a real ring, he said. We were too busy building everything else. But I want you to have this. Not because it changes anything, but because you changed everything for me. She didn't speak. Just pressed her forehead to his and whispered, "Put it on me." He slid it onto her finger, and they sat there, wrapped in the quiet certainty that comes only after storms have passed and roots have sunk deep. In the months that followed, life didn't slow down, but it deepened. Gwen's business evolved into a social enterprise, partnering with Quinn's housing initiative to create real, sustainable change. They traveled sometimes, but more often stayed close to home, helping Damon with school projects and hosting backyard dinners for neighbors who'd once been strangers. One crisp autumn evening, Damon ran inside waving a paper. "I won a prize for my drawing. It's our house." They looked at the sketch together, 3 figures beneath a tree, a garden blooming in the corner, and a house with a heart on the door. Gwen kissed the top of his head. "Looks perfect to me." Quinn added, "It is perfect." And it was. Because they hadn't just fallen in love. They'd built something unshakable. Together. Forever.